So council, if I can have everybody's attention, please. I'd like to welcome everybody who is here to participate in or view our meeting tonight. I'd like to thank our media partners for both reporting on and broadcasting our meeting. We will call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
Under Agenda Item 1, I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen and Bruni, resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of February 11, 2019 be approved.
All in favor? Carried. So council, just to remind, we're doing our electronic voting, so if you can be sure to cast your vote.
Okay, I'm not getting Shamik or Christian. I can close it and force it.
Yeah, just close it. So just for the record, we don't have Councillor Scott, Councillor Christian, and Councillor... Yeah, okay, so we've closed it. So Councillor Scott and Christian are both in favor? Yeah. But you did vote on yours? Okay. So we're, Madam Clerk, continue.
Okay. Under Agenda Item 3, pecuniary interest, Councillor Nero has declared pecuniary interest with respect to Agenda Item 6.10, Allen Side Road, Wallace Terrace truck traffic. His daughter resides on Allen Side Road. Councillor Hilsinger has declared a conflict with respect to the 2019 Cultural Financial Assistant Grants, as she's an employee of the Algoma Arts Festival Association. And Mayor Provenzano has declared a conflict with respect to the leasing and operation of a restaurant space in the Southwest Building at Roberta Bonder Park, as the operator is a client of the law firm.
Any other conflicts that we have missed, Council? Seeing none, move on. Just for the public's notice and awareness, we now not only declare our conflicts open, there are sheets we file in advance to outline conflict. So, motion to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor? Carried.
Okay. Under Agenda Item 5, Agenda Item 5.1, the 30th anniversary of the Canadian Bush Plain Heritage Centre, Dan Ingram, Executive Director, and Edie Suriano, Events and Marketing Coordinator, are in attendance.
Welcome to Council, sir.
Thank you. I actually have Donna Shire with me in place of Edie Suriano. She's the chair of our 30th anniversary committee. So Edie's in Florida right now, surprisingly. I don't think it's minus 20 there, but that's another story. The staff and the volunteers would like to welcome everyone to our 30th anniversary celebration, which we're holding as a year-long celebration to celebrate the great treasure we have in Sault Ste. Marie. On March 18th, everyone's invited to mark the official anniversary date. Staff and volunteers will be opening the museum free of charge to the public all day. We have guided tours from 2 o'clock till 6 o'clock, and we have at 3 o'clock, we're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremonies. We're going to have a few dignitaries say a few words in the ribbon cutting. March 21st is a chamber after 5. April 8th to the 11th, we're having a bush plane festival. So we're inviting people to come free of charge again to that event. We have some activities in the evenings. We'll have all these posted on our website, but just give you a brief overview. May 29th is a special day for us. We have Roberta Bondar coming to do a multimedia presentation at the Bush Plane Museum, again free of charge for that event. There is limited seating, so we'll ask people in advance to book their place. July 21st to 23rd, we're going to have our first ever fly-in. We're going to have the bush plane, the float planes can fly in right to the bush plane. Planes coming in by wheeled transportation can land at the airport. We'll arrange transportation. We'll have a full festival weekend featuring Dave Hadfield, who'll be, we hope, will be flying the Foxmoth that week, which is a plane that we've been building for 25 years, and it'll be its inaugural flight. And he's also going to be entertaining the crowd at our feature event on Saturday night. And we're doing the Bush Plane Parade. In the parade at the Rotary Day, we're going to have a 30th anniversary theme. We have our Bush Plane Days. We're going to have a 30th anniversary theme. We're going to hopefully host a haunted hangar in partnership with Zombie Walk. Our holiday gift and craft show is going to be a special occasion in November, and we're capping the year off with a New Year's Eve celebration with entertainment by the Reptile. So the public is welcome to all these events. The gala will have tickets available, and there will be public tickets available for the Dave Hadfield presentation as well. But other than that, everything is going to be free of charge. Donations are always welcome at the Bush Plane. We are not for profit and charity. And that's all I'd like to say. Invited to come out and celebrate with us.
Thank you very much. We have a proclamation to begin the celebrations. Whereas the Canadian Bush Plane Heritage Centre was formed in 1989 by a small group of volunteers wishing to preserve Ontario's rich bush plane and firefighting heritage. Whereas the CBHC preserves and tells the story of this heritage and how it has shaped life in northern and remote parts of our country through the collection and exhibition of bush planes and forest firing equipment. And whereas the CBHC serves as a center for research and information on bush plane and forest fire fighting. And whereas CBHC's vision is to connect people of all ages to Canada's exciting bush plane and forest protection heritage through high quality, enjoyable exhibits, programs, and visitor experience offered in a world-class museum. Whereas the CBHC values and believes in authenticity, it is rooted and strengthened by its first-hand connection to real places, people, and things. Access. It provides the highest possible level of public access to aircrafts while ensuring visitor safety and artifact preservation. Quality, it adheres to professional standards of program design and delivery consistent with the Museum of National Stature and World Repute. Volunteerism, it respects and appreciates the contributions and commitment of volunteers. Now therefore I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, hereby proclaim March 18th, 2019 as the day of the 30th anniversary of the Canadian Bush Plane Heritage Centre. I urge all citizens to support the 30th anniversary festivities scheduled throughout the upcoming year in celebration of the Canadian Bush Plane Heritage Centre. Thank you.
Thank you.
Under Agenda Item 5.2, Quanta Drama Festival 2019, Randy Houston-Jones, President of the Sioux Theatre Workshop, and Susanna Harantz, Vice President of the Sioux Theatre Workshop, are in attendance.
Welcome to Council. You can move the mic.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
We are here to talk about the Quanta Drama Festival 2019. Quanta is a registered non-profit charitable organization whose purpose is to promote, encourage, and broaden non-professional theatre in Northern Ontario. Member groups from this region include the Sioux Theatre Workshop in Sault Ste. Marie, the Gateway Theatre Guild, North Bay, Espanola Little Theatre from Espanola, Gore Bay Theatre from Gore Bay, Take Two from Timmins, and Elite Theatre from Elliott Lake. Each year, Quanta operates an adjudicated drama festival in the hometown of one of its member group. This year, Sault Ste. Marie Sioux Theatre Workshop is hosting the 4-day event. Adjudicators are chosen from the ranks of professional or educational expert listed in Theatre Ontario's Talent Bank. In addition to the professional adjudications, this festival includes workshops, forums, social activities, and awards. The winning play is invited to take part in the Theatre Ontario Festival, representing the Quanta region in a competition with plays from across the province.
The performances start Wednesday, March 13th with the Sioux Theatre Workshop's production of Mending Fences by Norm Foster. Then Thursday, March 14th with Gore Bay Theatre's production of This Is How We Got Here by Keith Barker. Friday, March 15th, Gateway Theatre Guild's production of Our Town by Thornton Wilder. And Saturday, March 16th, Elate's production of Shorthanded by Michael Grant. Our festival concludes with an awards brunch on Sunday, March 17th, where all participants, families, and friends gather together to celebrate all the hard work. The performances will be held at the Community Theatre Centre. Start time is 7:30 each night. All adjudications, workshops, after-show green rooms, and banquet will be held at the Delta Hotel, who is our host. Tickets are available at the Station Mall box office. If you'd like more information, check out our Facebook page for Quanta Festival 2019 or the Sioux Theatre Workshop's website. And we hope that you all come out and support community theatre.
Thank you.
And I would like to add that you're not only, by supporting the theater, you're not only supporting the community theater. We have here these little two kids, Elsa and Christian. They love theater. And just to give you a sample of how much he loved them, they love theater. Christian was at rehearsal for Mending Fences the other day, and he told me that it was better than the iPad.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yes.
That's great to hear.
Theater is much more than a play.
Yeah.
So just come and join us.
Thank you. I have a proclamation for you. Whereas theater is an ancient and honored art form with recorded history spanning 2,500 years. Whereas it has been said that its roots go so deep in human nature that it may well be the wellspring of all the arts. Sault Ste. Marie has been producing excellent theater for nearly a century and has a thriving theater community. And Sault Ste. Marie has produced many successful professional plays in the entertainment industry. And whereas Theater Week is an opportunity for skill building, knowledge sharing, competition, entertainment, and community building, and whereas this year during Theater Week, the Sioux Theatre Workshop will partner with Quanta Drama Region to host the Quanta Drama Festival 2019 right here in Sault Ste. Marie. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim the week of March 11th to 17th, 2019 as Theater Week in the City of Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you.
Encourage everybody to get out and support theater and support this festival. It's great. Happy to see you here.
Thank you very much. Under agenda item 5.3, International Women's Day, representatives of the Sault Ste. Marie Chamber of Commerce are in attendance.
Welcome to council.
Thank you. Thank you, Chimigwech, Mayor and City Council members, for your time this evening to acknowledge and recognize the contributions that women make to our community every single day. Anipkiaus Kwandijnakas Makwadodam Baugting Donjaban Chinendam Nungo. I am Little Thunder Woman of the Bear Clan, proud member of Batchewana First Nation. My English name is Karen Bird, and I'm also a very proud member of the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors and Executive Committee. I'd like to recognize my fellow board member, Trish Porco, who is here, and also our CEO, Roy Ring. There is a strong global women's network, continuously linking diverse activities ranging from political rallies, business conferences, networking, mentoring events, local markets, and so much more every day of the year. We are currently in a very transformational time. The world is witnessing an awakening through many different movements, such as Me Too, Time's Up Now, and the long overdue awareness building around our nation's missing and murdered Indigenous women. The right to vote, equal access to employment opportunities at all levels, equal pay for equal work, the right to make decisions about your own body, the right to maintain your identity, the right to serve in the military, the right to be protected in law as a basic human being without a differentiation as being a woman. For decades, strong women have been blazing a trail in every aspect of life to ensure that the basic rights afforded all citizens include women fairly and equitably. International Women's Day, March 8th, is an official holiday in many countries around the world and a day of celebration in Canada and locally. It's a day for women to be even more vocal when inspiring one another and sharing our stories of struggle and success. Economic leadership and business contributions are no exception to the dynamic work that women are doing. Women in Canada are more likely to open a business than any other nation in the world. We outpace our counterparts in new startups in all other G2 countries. The local Chamber of Commerce is supporting, honoring, and developing women's leadership on March 8th by presenting at our Women in Business Breakfast the Athena Leadership Award. The Athena Leadership Award was inspired by the goddess of Greek mythology known for her strength, courage, wisdom, and enlightenment, qualities embodied in the Athena leadership model. The award is unique in scope, local, national, and international, and presented to women or men who are honored for professional excellence, community service, and for actively assisting women in their attainment of professional excellence and leadership skills. In honor of the International Women's Day campaign, there's a theme, #Balance for Better. We will host a panel discussion with businesswomen who are from a variety of professions in executive level positions and entrepreneurs. They will share experiences, success stories, and advice to help inspire and support businesswomen in Sault Ste. Marie. We have a teaching in our Ojibwe culture about the sacredness of women. And from the very point of your existence, the first thing that you hear is your mother's heartbeat. In anyone who's ever attended any of our ceremony or powwows, you hear that drumbeat. That is what gives the entire gathering meaning and what everyone follows. It only makes sense that women contribute in all levels of life to continue that heartbeat of our community and humanity as a whole maintains strong. Let us all work for balance for the better.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have a proclamation for you. Whereas Friday, March 8th, 2019 is International Women's Day, a day to recognize women's achievements and acknowledge the challenges that they continue to face in the quest for gender equality. Whereas according to Canadian studies and statistics, increased economic participation of women resulted in a $130 billion contribution to economic activity in 2012 alone, equivalent to approximately 7% of the gross domestic product. Further, when a woman decides to start a business, she tends to stay in business longer. In other words, women-led business survival rates are higher. Further, in terms of employee growth rates, female-owned majority firms with growth intentions are significantly more active in hiring new employees. Whereas equality between women and men is enshrined in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and we have made great strides in many areas such as education and workforce participation, nevertheless, challenges remain. Too few women are advancing into leadership roles. Women are underrepresented in politics. Women in the workforce tend to earn less than men. Women continue to be responsible for the majority of caregiving. Women continue to experience high rates of gender-based violence. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzetto, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim and recognize March 8th, 2019 as International Women's Day in Sault Ste. Marie. I urge all of our citizens to recognize and celebrate women's achievements and acknowledge the challenges that they continue to face in the quest for gender equality, and to challenge attitudes and behaviors that allow gender inequality to exist. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Sean Halliday with the Local Immigration Partnership is in attendance with respect to Agenda Item 8.1.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, City Council, and the gallery. Thanks for allowing me a couple of minutes here. Let's just give you a little bit of context about the resolution that you'll be voting on shortly. So just a few slides just to give a very broad overview about what this is, and feel free to ask me any questions after. So this afternoon I'd like to talk to you about the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination, or SMARD for short, because I'm not going to say that mouthful every time. So SMARD is one of 6 coalitions of a continental nature that compose the International Coalition of Cities Against Racism. The International Coalition was launched in 2004 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, known as UNESCO, and consists of networks of cities interested in sharing their experiences in order to improve their policies to combat racism, discrimination, exclusion, and intolerance. SMAR's goals are to, number 1, share experiences and lessons learned with others, and number 2, to strengthen policies to counter all forms of discrimination to achieve greater social inclusion. So why the M in SMARD? So M is for the municipalities, such as our own one. And so it has to be recognised that municipalities have unique strengths and capacities that make them a critical and central actor in advancing the objectives of inclusion, tolerance, diversity and equity in such broad fields as being the seat of power in local politics, as a major employer, as the organisation that governs the delivery of essential local community services, and as a major purchaser of contracted and third-party goods and services. So in those 4 areas, the city can wield a lot of influence about how we move this work forward. So in 2014, the city of Sault Ste. Marie became a member of SAMARD, and in doing so, in June of that year, we adopted SAMARD's what are known as the 10 common commitments, which fall under 3 broad areas of what's called municipal responsibility. So the 3 areas of municipal responsibility are, so the first one is the municipality as a guardian of the public trust. And you'll see here there's 4 commitments that fall under here. So number 1 is to increase vigilance against systemic and individual racism and discrimination. Number 2, to monitor racism and discrimination in the community more broadly, as well as municipal actions taken to address racism and discrimination. Number 3, to inform and support individuals who experience racism and discrimination. And number 4, to support policing services in their efforts to be exemplary institutions in combating racism and discrimination. The second area of responsibility is the municipality as an organisation in the fulfilment of human rights. So, number 5 here was to provide equal opportunities as a municipal employer, service provider and a contractor. Number 6, to support measures to promote equity in the labour market. Number 7, to support measures to challenge racism and discrimination and promote diversity and equal opportunity in housing. And the final area is the municipality as a community sharing responsibility for respecting and promoting human rights and diversity. And so commitment number 8 here is to involve citizens by giving them a voice in anti-racism initiatives and decision making. Number 9, to support measures to challenge racism and discrimination and promote diversity and equal opportunity in the education sector and in other forms of learning. And the final commitment is to promote respect, understanding and appreciation of cultural diversity and inclusion of Indigenous and racialised communities into the cultural fabric of the municipality. So what are the benefits of creating a more welcoming and inclusive community? And I think probably most of us agree there are many, but I've just listed some of the few highlights here. So for the municipality, it can help us offer more efficient and effective service and programme delivery. It can help foster an atmosphere of improved community safety and vibrancy. We can better measure and tackle incidents of racism and discrimination. We can support population and labour market goals through immigration, and we can help meet social equity goals. So in terms of developing a plan of action, this is an opportunity for our municipality to lead by example in creating a more inclusive, diverse and equitable community, to be an ambassador, a mentor and an influencer to encourage and instigate the changes we would wish to see in our city. We ask that Council endorse the formation of a committee led by the local immigration partnership that is tasked with furthering the development of a welcoming community where everyone feels accepted, valued and encouraged to be active contributors by promoting diversity and identifying opportunities to facilitate the advancement of the successful transition of newcomers to the city. This committee will consist of members of City Council, city staff members, as well as external stakeholders deemed appropriate by the SAMARD Committee. And just to give you maybe some ideas, here's some action examples I pulled from other cities. So for example, the city of Thunder Bay every 3 years conducts what it calls a workforce profile survey. This is a voluntary survey for staff, and they aim to really capture how the makeup of their staff reflects the community at large. And from those findings, they might look at their HR policies and the way that they target recruitment or write job ads and these sorts of things. The town of Newmarket adopted a supplier code of conduct and sets what they call ethical performance expectations for suppliers of goods, services and construction to the municipality. The City of Edmonton has a racism-free Edmonton initiative which looks at education of youth as part of that. The City of Ottawa created a youth action plan related to the municipal mandate and services in response to the priorities of Ottawa youth. And finally, for here in Sault Ste. Marie, we had the Shifting Indigenous Frontline Tactics Training, or SHIFT short, training with the police. And this would very much fall under an example of something we would like to see under SMART. And just to finish off, because some of you may not know completely about the local immigration partnership, so we've been hosted since our inception in 2009 by the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and we're a community-based consortium of over 50 organisations. We have 3 full-time positions that are fully funded by the Federal Government Ministry, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, and we're really here to help sort of systemise local engagement and settlement services. So we are tasked with enhancing the settlement system capacity to support the ongoing development of a more welcoming and inclusive community in order to more successfully attract, integrate and retain newcomers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Council, we have a motion. I'm going to have the clerk read the motion.
A motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen and Gardy. Whereas provincial population projections from the Ontario Ministry of Finance indicate that the Algoma region's population is expected to continue to decline to the year 2041 at a rate that is the most precipitous in the Northeast region, while the province as a whole is projected to see an overall population increase. And whereas the report identifies migration as the most important factor contributing to population growth as a whole, and whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie has previously called for the implementation of an immigration pilot program as a means to expedite immigration. And whereas, as the City of Sault Ste. Marie is a member of the Canadian Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination, and whereas this network brings together municipalities that endeavour to improve their policies against racism and discrimination, undertaking initiatives in an effort to build welcoming communities, and whereas the Local Immigration Partnership is a community-wide multi-sectoral partnership working to strengthen the community's capacity to welcome newcomers and improve integration outcomes through enhanced economic, social, political, and civic participation. And whereas the Local Immigration Partnership has expressed an interest in forming a committee comprised of stakeholders working to advance these efforts. And whereas the City of Sault Ste. Marie, under the Quality of Life focus in the 2016-2020 Corporate Strategic Plan, states, "We embrace newcomers. One of our key priorities is a civic engagement as we plan, communicate, and deliver municipal services. Diversity generates new ideas, perspectives, and new frontiers for community growth. Now, therefore, be it resolved that City Council endorses the Local Immigration Partnership, forming a committee tasked with furthering the development of a welcoming community where everyone feels accepted, valued, and encouraged to be active contributors by promoting diversity and identifying opportunities to facilitate the advancement of the successful transition of newcomers to the city."
So, thank you, Sean. And before I pass this to Councillor Vezo Allen to speak to if she wishes, I think it's important to recognize and acknowledge that this isn't a reactive motion. This is something that we've been working on for quite a while. My office has been working with the LIP on. We had some discussions about the designation we got in 2014 and what we can do as we move forward. We were looking at our strategic plans and future Sault Ste. Marie and talking about how we could work together. So this wasn't precipitated by any recent activity. This was something that frankly was going to be on the council agenda a month ago and a month and a half ago, but we were still going back and forth and talking about it. So this is a proactive motion that's meant to meet the goals that we've all been discussing. And I want to thank the LIP specifically for all the good work they've done with Jordan Allard of my office in working on this and looking at it. So, thank you. Councillor Vezo Allen.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank Sean and the team at LIP for getting all of this work done. And really, it just solidifies the opportunity of what LIP can do in bringing the stakeholders together. So this committee from discussions with Sean and with Megan, will really give the LIP the means to really create a solid plan, to find out any gaps, to have a better way to communicate with other stakeholders that are helping, not just with new settlers into the community, but also some gaps in services as far as inclusion that we see in the community. So I support this. We have a really strong organization with LIP, and look forward to seeing what the committee can do.
Any other comments on this or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Be sure to log your votes on your respective devices. So I think we're at the consent agenda now, Madam Clerk.
Yes, we are.
So Council, we're at the consent agenda, matters on consent. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.1.2, the U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum.
Yep.
Good letters, and I guess, has anything, I realize these letters are only a week or so ago, but have you had any confidence or any sense that these tariffs are coming to an end?
So I traveled last week at the request of Algoma. So I went to Ottawa with the CEO of Algoma and Algoma staff who are making representations on this issue. So I did have an opportunity to meet with members of the Prime Minister's office and the Minister of Finance's office, and actually with the International Trade Minister herself. And I can say that I'm confident that this issue is on the top of all of their minds, and they're actively working on finding a resolution to it. Everybody would like to see a complete tariff lift, because these tariffs make absolutely no sense, and they're detrimental on both sides of the border, and they're not justified under the section that they're levied under. And they're working hard on that still. So they're working at all levels of the federal government with all of their counterparts in the U.S. to push for a tariff lift. And from my perspective, they have not given up on achieving that. And it's something that it seems is the time is near, and they're working hard on it. And I think what we have to do is stay supportive. And this was our message: whatever we can do as a community to help, we're going to do. So stay supportive and show a unified front and continue to push for these things to be lifted. So I don't have any specific dates or timelines when we'll see any more information on this, but I do have a lot of confidence from the information I've received that everybody's on the same page, and there's a lot of effort to try and deal with this issue in the near term.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. For whatever it's worth, if the Sioux Council can be of assistance, I realize these tariffs are almost a year old now. May 31st of last year they came into effect, like you say, not supported by the section that they that the president, the U.S. president claims they have been applied under. But I'm glad to hear that there's work being done on them. I would think it's a mistake, and if the federal government were to ask my opinion, which they're not, I would tell them it would be a mistake to sign the new NAFTA without these being lifted. And I know that they've negotiated it not conditional on these tariffs being lifted, but I would be disappointed to see the new trade agreement signed with these still in place, because I think we lose our leverage at that point. So I am eager to see the federal government do whatever it needs to have these lifted, because it's hurting our primary industry.
I agree, and I think there's some receptiveness to the position you just expressed, and I think there's some consideration of that. I do want to thank our partners across the bridge in Sault, Michigan. They invited me to speak at an event that Senator Peters was at, and I was very frank with him about my feelings on this, and I spoke publicly to the room, and a number of our counterparts spoke up in my favor, and spoke up in our favor, and said they supported Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario's position. So it was nice to see that kind of support from our neighbors in Michigan. So I want to thank them publicly for that. So we'll keep at it, Councillor Shoemaker, and I certainly I share your view. I would like to see this dealt with prior to and after being ratified. And hopefully that position will be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other matters in the consent agenda, council? Go ahead, Councillor Shoemaker.
6.3. Oh, you're
So
in conflict on
I
that
have a
one.
conflict, so Councillor Dufour?
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Through you to, I think it's Mr. Vare. Mr. Vare, this is an exciting announcement, potentially a Beavertail location coming to Sault Ste. Marie. What are there options that we'll see this, throughout the community at different times of the year? So I know at Rotary, they typically have a Beavertail location. Will there be options to have it perhaps at the skating trail next year or other events, Bonsu, throughout town as they pop up?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Actually, I'm going to refer this to our Director of Community Services, Brent Lamming. He's been dealing directly with the proponents there.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, yes, there's a lot of opportunity with respect to this starting potentially May 1st. It's a very tight time frame if Council supports this evening, where they have to get their franchise agreement in place, the agreement in place with the City of Sault Ste. Marie as well. I know the proponents are excited about bringing this new franchise forward. Here at Sault Ste. Marie, be the first in Northern Ontario. It's one of 150 iconic brands here in our country. So it'd be very great to see this come into our municipality. I know there's been a very positive response how this would act. This will fit very nicely in that space, in that ice cream spot that used to be the old lock tour boat area. So from that perspective, I think there's a lot of new ways that they can introduce this in the community, but the first thing is to get the leasehold improvements done in that space and get them open on time. So that'll be a very tough challenge to get done in a couple months.
Okay, well, I look forward to city staff getting it done. Thank you.
Okay.
Does any other councillors want to speak to this item? Councillor Vezo-Allen?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Mr. Lamming. From my understanding, with the 3-year lease, they are only going to be paying rent from May through to October. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, what they are going to be signing if they're approved here is $500 a month, and then they'll also be paying up to $100 per month to other services toward utilities at this point right now. And they have the option, if it goes forward, it was originally from May till September. They want to open till May to have the option to go all the way to the end of October, weather permitting.
Okay, so they will not be charged rent from November through to April within that 3-year lease period?
That is correct.
Okay. And with the franchisee, and you may not know this, my only question would be, if it's a business that's just open a portion of the time, is that going to adhere to the franchisee's requirements? So that I would caution that, because I know with a lot of franchise agreements, there are minimums in place. So that would be something that I think to make sure that is all correct before we move forward.
Through you, Mr. Acting Mayor, Councillor Vezo-Allen, our proponents were actually in Montreal just recently, so they have spoken with the main company, and they have addressed the proposal that's forward, and they're open to it. So they're waiting to see the lease agreement from the city, what that looks like, and then they'll be able to go from there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other councillors? Okay, Mr. Shoemaker, do you have any more items on consent?
Yes, Mr. Acting Mayor. 6.7, the film feature.
Okay.
This is a resolution to exempt a film production from the noise bylaw. And obviously, we're trying to encourage filming of more movies in Sault Ste. Marie. And so I'm wondering if, to make it easier on films, if this is a power that City Council can simply delegate, and these types of reports not have to come back to us, so that there's not this 2-week or potentially longer holdup for these movies to get their approval.
So we'll go to Deputy CEO White for that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, that's exactly the type of thing we're looking at. We are looking at bringing a delegation bylaw back to you, which is encompassing a whole lot of things. The first, it'll come to you in 3 phases. The first phase will consist of the delegations, which we already have, but which are scattered throughout many different bylaws and resolutions. That will be more so to collect them all under one bylaw and get them all into a similar and consistent format. The next phase would follow fairly quickly, and that would contain low-hanging fruit such as this sort of exemption.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So the answer is yes, and we'll be delegating that.
Perfect.
If you approve.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, are you done with your matters of consent, Councillor Shoemaker?
I have a couple others that I'm certain the ward councillors will come up with, but I'll go with 6.11.
Okay.
McNabb, South Market and Boundary Road sanitary sewer. Through you to Mr. Elliott, our Director of Engineering, or Ms. Tado. The report talks about how it's in the municipality's best interest to procure this service through AECOM, and I'm just wondering if that can be fleshed out a little bit to explain why exactly that this is in the community's best interest to sole source this contract.
Through you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. In this instance, we have some previous work history with asset management specialist that AECOM has on staff through their Winnipeg office who specializes in pipe condition assessments. So we did contact them directly and coordinated a joint scope of work, which is sometimes essential for engineering projects where you're relying on the expertise of the professional engineer to assist in outlining specific tasks that may be required in that instance. And in those specific circumstances, it's beneficial to go to one specific provider so that you can work on the scope together. And also, we took into account the value of the engineering services for larger projects. It may be a different method, but in this one, because of the low cost of work, the value in putting together an RFP for that type of thing, especially given the circumstances regarding the specialist nature of the work, we determined that it would be in the best interest to retain AECOM for the services.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just would and I commented on this to the director and Ms. Tado earlier. Some of that information would be helpful if it were in the report at the outset rather than having to seek it out.
Understood. Councillor Gardy, I have you on the list next.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. 6.2, please. This is of you traveling to Toronto in April for 3 days. I was just wondering if you could provide the public with a little bit more information about exactly what you're doing down there.
I'm going to have to just quickly familiarize myself with that.
Okay.
I think that's when we're going down for the job fair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Future Sault Ste. Marie has organized a job fair through our labor force development officer, and they've got a whole day actually in downtown and a day in Mississauga. And they asked me if I would attend and support that and speak with some of the businesses we're bringing and some of the people that we would be recruiting. And I said I would, and I'm going to be doing that. And Tom, if you have anything you want to add, since you're going to be involved in it, your office planned it, I'm happy to cede the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to add to that, I think important to note that, as the Mayor indicated, we're going to have a number of employers down there with us. And this is really all in the effort to help attract skilled labor that our employers have indicated that they're having difficulty finding in the community. And our Labor Force Development Coordinator has made some excellent contacts with employment groups down there that we're partnering with while we're in Toronto. And then we also anticipate reaching out to the members of the Sioux Network while we're down there and, delivering the same message to them while we're in Toronto.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I think Councillor Bruni had a question on this issue.
Mr. Mayor, any consideration about going out west with the high unemployment rate and the tradesmen available? Any consideration going out west to attract
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, yes, actually, our Labour Force Development Coordinator has been looking at that and making some outreach to see if there's some organizations we could do a similar arrangement with and partner out there to host such an event.
Do you have a time frame?
Not at this time for that event, yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Christian on the same matter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank you for going on to this event, and I certainly want to publicly thank Mr. Ver for trying to include the Sud Network folks. I really think that is important. I mean, we have to continue that effort, and this is a great opportunity to do that. So I just want to publicly thank him and his staff for trying to incorporate that into the event.
And me for going.
And I just said that, absolutely.
Anybody else on this matter? Seeing none? Okay. Councillor Gardy, do you have any other matters?
6.10, please.
Yep, go ahead.
So I just, on the Allen Side Road, Wallace Terrace issue, I just wanted to thank Mr. Elliott for how quickly the report was returned to us. I appreciate that very much. Everybody can see within the report that it talks about that Allen Side Road is particularly has outlived its useful life, and the condition of the asphalt is the main issue. And in April, when the annual resurfacing program is brought back to us, I'm hopeful that it's in position for consideration. I just had one question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Elliott in regards to Wallace Terrace west of Rowell Avenue. Okay, within the original motion, it talked about as the traffic moves west on Wallace Terrace and passes Rowell Avenue, the road merges from 4 lanes down to 2. And in the report, it seems that staff is adverse to dropping the speed limit to 50 beyond where the road switches down to 2 lanes. So I was just wondering for a little bit more information about that, if you could.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy, I think the issue was trucks mostly on the Wallace Terrace situation. So it's an enforcement issue to get the trucks off that portion of the road because it is not a truck route, either Class A or Class B truck route. So we didn't think that the speed of passenger vehicles and light trucks was a problem out there for that section, so we didn't recommend a speed drop. It's a tangent section, it's a straight line section of road, and the 60 kilometer an hour speed limit is appropriate there.
Okay. Comment is I don't necessarily agree, but we'll talk about that moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We face a similar issue in Ward 3 on Black Road with trucks traveling in areas that are not truck routes, and enforcement is the problem there. We're told enforcement is the problem there as well. So I know the answer is to call the police, but what can we do to improve our enforcement of these truck traffic routes? Because it's obviously a problem across the city. I don't know who I can direct that to, but.
We'll go with, we'll start with our city's engineer. So, Mr. Elliott, please.
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, the police services, we had a meeting with them about 6 months ago. There's a group, a couple of officers there that are part of what they call a core community group, and seems to us at least that they're really zeroing in on these issues. Not just an enforcement issue, they're zeroing in on communication with trucking companies. So we see some progress there with some other complaints that we've had in other wards. So police services, I think, is increasing their communications with the trucking companies, particularly the local ones, to ensure that truck routes are respected more. So both enforcement and communications is coming from that department. So I think that'll be helpful.
Okay. And can you enlighten us as to when we might start seeing some results? Because it certainly doesn't seem to be getting better.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Shoemaker, I don't know when the results will come. You'd have to talk to the police services to see how what manpower they have to enforce these things.
Okay. One more question. With respect to communication with local trucking companies, what else can residents do if they see a truck in a route that is not a truck traffic route?
Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, our administrative assistant in the engineering department can take a complaint from a resident, especially if they know who the offending trucking company is, if they take a picture or they know what truck is the a repeat offender. We take that information and we write letters to the trucking company and advise them that, that this is happening, and they can advise their drivers to cease using that truck route. And we copy that letter to the same folks at police services. So that's an ongoing. We've had some success on small individual situations where there's a repeat offender if the resident is able to identify who it is.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bruni on the same matter?
Yes, I was going to ask the same question because I did run into the same scenario regarding getting city staff involved. What's the time process in that? By the time we communicate, tell you which truck company is driving on a legal road, how fast does the city get involved in that?
Mr. Mayor to Councilor Bruni, we can get a letter together in a few days and sent to the trucking company. That's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else on that matter? Councillor Gardy?
Just anecdotally, I wanted to mention to everybody in the room that a number of neighbors that live on Allen Side Road have told me that they have noticed over the course of the last few weeks the Ministry of Transportation themselves pulling some trucks over. That I'm thinking that needs to do more with the weight of the trucks, but they've noticed that since the issue's been raised a bit, that they've seen a little bit more enforcement from the ministry as well out there. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Scott, go ahead. Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Elliott. Further to Councillor Gardy's question in regards to the speed limit suggestion of 60 kilometers compared to 50 kilometers, could I just get some clarification, because I have been asked by residents in the area. It says the guideline recommends posted speed limit of 60. What is that guideline?
It's Mr. Mayor to Councillor Scott, it's a guideline from the Transportation Association of Canada. It's kind of it's a one-page thing that our staff goes through, and there's a number of factors involved that comes out to suggest a suggested speed.
Okay.
That's the criteria we use.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else in this matter? Seeing none. Councillor Gardy, are you done on the consent agenda?
I am.
Councillor Bruni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Mr. Ver regarding 6.6, the business survey.
Oh, that was Councillor Christian. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I'm sure Councillor Christian will have a few questions.
I'm sure he'll follow up after you.
Because I'm not as thorough as he is. To Mr. Ver, regarding the 42 respondents, you're not satisfied with that outcome, are you?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Bruni, I would say no. I mean, we'd certainly like to have more businesses respond to that survey, and the folks at the EDC undertook the survey. They did do a lot of outreach and calling, promotion, and door knocking, so certainly wasn't as many businesses as we were hoping for.
Because speaking to businesses in the last several weeks, they weren't even aware of the survey, number one, the ones that I spoke to. But why didn't we tap into other networks? And I'll give you an example. The Chamber of Commerce or the tourism section. I mean, wouldn't those be ideal organizations to tap into? I mean, I'm sure they got a email system that they can contact all these businesses. I mean, there's over 700, if I'm not mistaken, in the chamber or more. I'm just... And I don't want to be rude or ignorant, but 42 respondents is not acceptable. I mean, for a survey, for the amount of time that was put into this, the 2 summer students, I just think we didn't tap into the right network. Am I wrong?
Through you to Councillor Bruni, I think 2 things. I mean, the staff did a lot of work. There was, the press releases. The media outlets did cover those press releases. They also undertook some paid campaigns. So what we are looking at is, there's a couple things there. One is, I think, a number of organizations are a bit surveyed to death because they get surveys from a number of different organizations and a number of different, for example, the Innovation Center does one on behalf of the province for some of the funding that they get. So there's a number of surveys that go out. And so that's what we're looking at now is how do we better coordinate amongst all the groups? And as you said, reach out to all the partners to see if we can't have more of a single survey that more people will pay attention to and more people will complete the survey as a result.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure Mr. Christian has a couple questions.
Councillor Christian. We can have Councillor Christian. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ver, I'm just looking at pages 12 and 13 in the summary. Just wondering if you could explain the difference between the statistics. Experience with retaining employees. I have experience with retaining employees. It's essentially the same heading, but different pie graphs. I'm just wondering if I missed something there.
So you're on page 12, you said?
Yeah, 12 and 13.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. It's been a while since I went through this with the staff there, so I'm not exactly sure on that question.
That's fine. It might have been some kind of maybe it's mistitled or something, but that would be my only question. And to Councillor Bruni's point, I understand the question but I can tell you that the number of businesses that the EDC and the Innovation Center staff actually reached out to personally to try to get responses from, even those, even that return rate was low. So your point's made. I mean, we can go to other organizations, but the ones that we reached out to, even a response rate was low. So that's disappointing. I guess the only good thing about, one of the good things about this is that we did hear proportionally a lot from smaller businesses, the 1 to 10 size. So I think that's encouraging. And Mr. Ver answered the one question I had was that I think this is something that we need to continue to do and that we have a plan in place so that we do in fact get better responses, because people always say they want to be able to contribute, they want their opinions heard, and so you have to give them the opportunity to do that. So hopefully if we can find a more efficient way to do that in the future and get the information we need for them, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other matters in the consent agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni, resolved that all items listed under date March 4, 2019, Agenda Item 6, Consent Agenda, be approved as recommended, save and accept Agenda Items 6.3, 6.8, and 6.10.
All in favor? Motion is carried. We are now on... Mr. Brown, we're still in our council meeting here.
Okay, I just wanted to make you aware that I'd like to request to speak to City Council about things that I did not ask of agenda review before the end of the meeting, as my right, as is my right according to
Mr. Brown, we're not at the end of the meeting. When we get to the end of the meeting, I'll address that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, accepted because of pecuniary interest. Agenda Item 6.3, that's the RFP for leasing and operation of restaurant, lounge, retail space.
Yeah, that has to be voted on separately.
Yep. So, Councillor.
So 6.3 was excluded from the consent agenda because of my conflict.
So it's a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni, resolved that the report of the manager of purchasing dated at February 25, 2019 be received, and that the proposal submitted by S. Purvis J. DeCorpo for the lease and operation of restaurant, lounge, retail space at Roberta Bonder Park for a 3-year period commencing May 1, 2019 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And under agenda item 6.8, because of Councillor Hilsinger's conflict, I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni, resolved that the report of the Manager of Recreation and Culture dated February 25, 2019, concerning 2019 cultural financial assistance grants be received, and that the recommendation of the Cultural Advisory Board to allocate the budget of $53,900 in the following amounts be approved. Algoma Arts Festival Association, $4,500. Algoma Conservatory of Music, $5,400. Algoma Festival Choir, $5,500. Arts Council of Sault Ste. Marie and District, $10,000. Over the Rainbow Children's Entertainment Series, $2,500. Quanta, $4,000. Sioux Blues Society, $2,000. Sioux Symphony, $6,000. Sioux Theatre Workshop, $5,000. Shadows of the Mind Film Festival, $5,000. And the Shingwag Anishinaabe Student Association, $4,000.
All in favor? Motion's carried.
And 6.10, Allen Side Road and Wallace Terrace truck traffic. A motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni, resolved that the report of the Director of Engineering dated February 25, 2019 concerning truck traffic on Allen Side Road and Wallace Terrace be received as information.
All in favor? Carried. So it's because of the electronic voting now, Council, we never used to separate the consent votes because it all goes as one, but because we're essentially recording every vote now, we have to separate the consent votes where one of us have a conflict.
Okay. And agenda item 7.3.1, future SSM project funding update. I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Nero, resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO, Community Development and Enterprise Services, dated March 4, 2018, regarding future SSM project be received as information.
So Council, maybe before we get into questions on this, I was going to offer some of my perspective, maybe set some context, and then you can ask whatever questions you'd like to ask of either Mr. Ver or myself or the CAO on this matter. I want to begin by acknowledging, I think, a shared perspective and let you know that the CAO and Mr. Ver and I discussed this matter on Friday morning. Mr. Ver found out about it on Thursday night. He advised us about it on Friday morning. And we made sure to meet with the Future Sault Ste. Marie team on Friday because we've got a lot of confidence and faith and excitement in the project. And we wanted to make sure the Future Sault Ste. Marie team recognized that their employment was stable and recognized that notwithstanding this, this wasn't going to deter us from moving forward. I think it's important to recognize that this project isn't our project. Like, this project's a community-based project. This is our community plan, and we have stakeholders from across the community who not only have offered us letters of support, but that are participating in it. We have on a volunteer basis. So although I see this as disappointing and I see this as frustrating, I certainly don't see this as fatal. And we should keep working on our community plan with our community partners. And we should be sure to not let what is a roadblock become a complete obstacle. We still have the funds that we've committed to it, and we have confirmed through FedNor that the FedNor fund shouldn't be affected by this. We've confirmed that verbally. We'll look for some confirmation in writing in that respect. So we still have a tremendous amount of confidence in this project. We have a tremendous amount of faith in this project, and I think we can all see that there are some exciting things that have been happening, and we're going to keep on making those exciting things happen. And my feeling in a situation like this is if the provincial government has decided at this point that they don't want to be part of the project or support the project, that's a decision that they have the autonomy to make. But that doesn't take away from the importance of it or the success of it. And at some point, they might want to be part of it. And if at some point they want to be part of it, we'll certainly welcome them back into it at that point. From my perspective, although everybody knows that this is something I believe in and I've been working on with other members of our community, I don't want to make a substantial issue out of losing this funding. And the reason why I don't want to make a substantial issue out of losing this funding is there are things happening in our community that are, from my perspective, are a greater concern. This project is going to move forward. This project will be a success. I believe that, and I know that the people that are working on it with us under your direction believe that. I'm more concerned about the fact that we still do not have support for a level 3 withdrawal management center in our community. I'm more concerned with the fact that we don't have an addiction medicine consult team in our community. We have these proposals before the provincial government through different community partners, and we have other proposals before the provincial government through different community partners that need the provincial government's support. Future Sault Ste. Marie will live, it will be successful, but I don't want to focus on the loss of funding to Future Sault Ste. Marie and not focus on the larger significant pressing issues, which are that withdrawal management proposal and that addictions consult team. We need those things. So if I'm going to die on any hill, if I'm going to raise a big ruckus about any significant issue, it will be those issues. And as disappointed as I am in the government's decision, I respect its right to make that decision. And it's made that decision. And we still have it within our control to make sure this project is a success. But I think we have to focus as a community on the higher, more priority and urgent issues. And we have to hold the government to account to support those issues. And they're currently not supporting those issues. So we have to keep on pushing on them to support those issues. I don't want to take my focus off that and push on this issue. I'm willing to accept its decision in this respect. And Tom and Al and the team here and the CDR, the Community Development Roundtable, and the Future Sault Ste. Marie team, we will make this work, and we will be successful. We have a little less money now, but we certainly have enough money to keep on going forward. So before we get into questions, I wanted to share that with you to inform the discussion and just to give you my sense of what I've been thinking about since I found this out. So we'll start with Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you were, and thank you for that update. When you were notified, did the government at all indicate that this would something that can be reconsidered, or is it basically a complete done deal? Did they leave any door open at all, or was it just
I had the letter was ambiguous as to reason, so there wasn't a specific reason, but it wasn't unambiguous as to the potential partnership in the future. So the letter said if there were things that came out of the project that we wanted to apply for, we could apply for them at that time. I don't have any reason to believe that it is or isn't definitive. I've had a conversation with our MPP. I've had some discussions with him. He was going to make some inquiries in that respect and get back to me, and I'll likely have some conversations with him hopefully this week about it. But one of the questions that him and I discussed and that I asked and that he was going to look into is whether it was definitive. So that was certainly something I raised.
Okay.
I don't have an answer to that yet, though.
All right, fair enough. I know it's early. Is the attempt at this point to modify the exercise, the whole project, or are we going to try to find additional funding, or is it too early to even address that question yet?
So it is early, right?
Yeah.
So it's, Mr. Ver received a letter Thursday nights at some point, and our immediate concerns on Friday was talking to the Future Sault Ste. Marie team and then having an assessment internally on it. Staff will look at everything this week, and they'll work with the Future Sault Ste. Marie team. Senior staff will work together. They'll work with the Future Sault Ste. Marie team. I'll get the CDR together. The CDR will have a look at it. We'll have some discussions, and then we'll come back to council with what we believe the resolution to be.
Thank you, and I support your approach to this. I mean, I think it is a very positive initiative, and it's something the city needs. And I know that a lot of people have been involved. I know I'm playing my own small role in this on one of the committees, and I do think it's important. And to view it as a little bump in the road, and not a wall, and we should be able to work through it. So I mean, I support it 100%, and we need to get this done.
Councillor Gardy.
My question was about any future correspondence or correspondence you've had with Mr. Romano in regards to this. You answered it, so thank you.
Yeah, I reached out when Mr. Ver had explained to me the information he received. I reached out to our NPP, and him and I have had some discussion since.
Okay, thank you. And you know what, Mr. Mayor, you can respect that it's their right to make this kind of decision. I don't have to respect the decision that they've made. I think it's the wrong decision. I think you've enumerated a couple of examples as to where the provincial government is not answering calls for assistance from this community. And I'd hope that Mr. Romano takes some time over the course of the next couple of weeks to see what he can do to assist us with this. Thank you.
Yeah, let me be clear. Notwithstanding, I respect their right to make the decision. I have asked the MPP to look into the matter and assist us with it. Councillor Shoemaker.
Mr. Gardy stated my position quite clearly. Now, you said you had spoke to Mr. Romano about this. What are the nature, like what exactly is it that you asked of him?
The first thing I asked is whether he had an understanding of why it the funding was being pulled. And then I asked if, in his opinion, whether something could be done about that and whether he was willing to make that effort. So, not a lot of clarity on the first point. On the second point, he did indicate and undertake to look into whether something could be done about it and get back to me. And I think when he gets back to me on that, we'll have a discussion on the third point, which is his level of interest in supporting us and moving forward.
Okay. Thanks, because like Mr. Gardy said, I mean, these are funds that have been committed, relied on for budgeting decisions. I mean, just at council on a couple weeks ago at budget, we approved a number of projects that we were relying on 33% dollars for from future SSM. So to a third of the way through a project, cut the funding indicates to me that the provincial government is frankly abdicating its responsibility and its contractual obligations. I realize that they have a contractual out, but it's nonsensical when we've hired people, we've got projects that we're ready to spend money on, that they withdraw with their 1/3 funding. And I think I understand that there are higher priorities, but that doesn't mean that they should get a pass on being held accountable for this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Vezo-Allen.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver. Mr. Ver, from reading the agreement, and I've worked with NHFC on numerous occasions, and they do have a clause in the contract. And this was 3 years funding, 3-year funding contract. From what I could understand, they will honor all of the year 1 eligible costs. Have you had any conversations with either your granting officer or with Ms. Muncaster concerning this?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, we've sent an email to the folks that were listed in the letter to have our first meeting with them on that. Our understanding is, they will cover costs up until March 31st.
Would that include a full year 1 of project time from their funding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, not quite a full year. When a number of the staff were onboarded was late fall, so it wasn't a full year of expenses either that were included within that time period.
What were some of the primary eligible costs? And I know you don't have the grant application in front of you, but can you give us an essence of what the eligible costs were in this funding pool?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, there was 3 high-level categories. One was the staff that the future SSM project employs. The second was the money for project consultants that would be involved across the different pillars and the different action teams. And the third one was really some sector-specific funds that we had allocated, again, to support the recommendations and the overarching goals as it relates to community promotion, post-secondary institution development, et cetera.
And then just a comment, so based on some of the reductions in funding, if there are some specific initiatives that you're looking for funding, please feel free to reach out to me, and I could possibly give your staff some options to apply for funding. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Council? One of the things that I reflected on over the weekend is that we have a lot of really tremendous things happening in our community. And I think it would be great if both Minister Fideli, who is a former Northern Ontario mayor and a senior minister, and Minister Rickford, who has a lot of experience in politics in Northern Ontario, if they can come here and see the great things that we have happening. So my office is actually going to reach out to both those offices over the next week and invite both those gentlemen to Sault Ste. Marie to see what we're doing and to see the great things happening at the college, and the great things happening at the university, and the great things happening across our city. So I hope that they take us up on that offer, and I think if they do come here, maybe they'll be more interested in or willing to support things like our community plan on a going forward basis, and we'll certainly make that effort.
I'm waiting for Councillors Gardy, Hilsinger,
So Councillor Gardy and Hilsinger, have you voted?
and Vesoalan.
And Vesoalan.
It's not up.
So your votes are now recorded, I believe?
Councillor Vesoalan?
I'm just getting vote in progress.
Okay, I'll manually.
Just
You're
tap on
voting
it.
in the affirmative?
There we go.
I can push it for you.
Did it.
She did it. Because that brings us to section 8 of the agenda. We've already dealt with 8.1, so we will move to 8.2. Madam Clerk, if you could read that motion, please.
I have a motion by Councillors Gardy and Vesoalan, whereas 45% of the Public Works winter maintenance fleet is over 9 years old and 23% is beyond its life expectancy. And whereas during the last month of winter control, Public Works has lost a trackless, 4 blowers, and a snowplow to either repair or irreparable damage. And whereas the age of the winter control equipment makes the challenge of keeping city streets free and clear of snow and ice more difficult. And whereas Public Works vehicle reserve is insufficient to replace the vehicles that need to be replaced across the entire Public Works Department, including the vehicles needed for winter control and maintenance. And whereas Public Works requested a budget increase of $750,000 this year to address its vehicular needs, but did not receive that increase. Now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to include a $250,000 increase to the Public Works vehicle reserve in the 2020 preliminary budget, with a view to providing further increases of $250,000 in the 2021 and 2022 preliminary budgets respectively, pending a fleet services program review planned for 2020.
Councillor Gardy, would you like to speak to this motion?
Sure, please, Mr. Mayor. So, to me, it's a simple fact that the age of the fleet makes it challenging, as it says in the motion, to keep the streets free of snow and ice and to deal with the snowbanks. And Mr. Girardi, a couple of meetings ago during one of our budget meetings, was good enough to explain to us and give us some stats on particular pieces of equipment. The motion references some at large, but you know, he told us that in order to maintain the fleet moving forward, he needed $750,000, and there was a figure in there in terms of you know, a lesser amount. I think it was in and around $460,000. And at the time, based upon what we were deciding on for the community, we didn't feel that, only maybe a couple of us felt that we could provide that at that time. You know, our winter this year has been very unpredictable. There have been extensive snow events. There's been rain and high winds, and you know, the volume of and persistence of snow has been an issue. And you know, PWT is working hard to alleviate all of these concerns. I'm sure I'm not the only councillor around this table that's getting a bunch of phone calls about, you know, can you widen my street? Can you get rid of the banks? I can't see anything while I'm backing out of my driveway. I can't see anything as I'm approaching this corner. Well, you know, when you're using older equipment, maintenance becomes a challenge. And if residents demand the best in a service like snow removal, we can't keep using the same equipment that's getting older and older every passing year. And I believe it's time to invest, and I think that this is a responsible plan for doing so. So I am hoping to get the support of a majority of councillors around this table. Thank you.
The seconder want to speak to it? Any questions or comments on it? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification on the last clause, the therefore be it resolved clause. So we're seeking to include $250,000 in the preliminary budget for 2020. If we approve this, are we also then putting $250,000 into the 2021 and 2022 preliminary budgets?
So it would have to be decided on at budget time, right? But the money would be inserted in the preliminary budget. So when you got the budget this year, the line item for that specific line item would be $250,000 more.
Right.
If you pass that and don't take it out, it will be $250 more. The following year, so let's say this year, if you don't pass it in preliminary budget, you don't raise it. Next year, the $250 will go in again. I think not the 500 because you didn't pass the 500, and this is $250 a year. So I don't think they can take the $250 you didn't pass and put it in the next year. Right. It's essentially instructing them to put $250 a year every year in the preliminary budget. Council will then have to approve that at budget time. But it takes it off the supplemental list and actually puts it in the budget,
right.
which is really the only difference here. This isn't really final, but it gets it off that big long list of supplementals where things get lost or buried, and it gets it into the budget. So if you don't want to do it, you're taking it out at that point.
Right. Well, I realize that we'll always have it'll always be subject to council approval, but I would certainly feel more comfortable approving it being included in this year's 2020 preliminary budget, forgetting about 2021 and 2022 until we deal with the 2020 budget. So I don't know if that's a friendly amendment or a hostile amendment, but that is.
Well, Councillor Gardy and Councillor Vezawalan consider it friendly, and they're willing just to have the 250 put in this year, then that would be, that would be their decision. I'd leave that to them. So I think Councillor Shoemaker is proposing that before we move on, Councillor Bruni, what Councillor Shoemaker is suggesting is that this motion only deals with directing $250 into the budget for this year for consideration. He's agreeable to that. So you guys can think of that. He's got no seconder right now to amend that, but we'll let you think on that. And I'll go to Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Who will I speak to regarding the fleet service program? Would that be Mr.
I think
Girardi?
Mr. Girardi.
Would you be able to speed this up instead of waiting until the year 2020? Can this be done earlier?
Councillor Bruni, this was also submitted at budget time, and it was a $50,000 cost for that budget item, and it was turned down. So council would have to proceed with finding funding for it.
So Councillor Bruni, if I can just add to that. So when this issue came up, I had a discussion with senior staff about that issue. Well, if we haven't done the assessment, should we be doing the assessment first? What I got back was, look, we can do the assessment, but like the 250 you had this year isn't going to be anywhere near. Like we're still going to be far short of what the assessment will say we have to invest. So
I'm all in favor of the 250, but for the 2021, 2022, I would like to see the service program review completed first before we allocate any other funding. This way we're all on the same page when we're providing the funding to PWT.
Councillor Nero.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question to Mr. Girardi, I guess. The vehicle reserve, what replenishes that? For years, we've always had money in the vehicle reserve. I understand that there's nothing in there, but what is replenishing that and why is it not keeping up?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Nero, I'll ask that the CFO give you the response on it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, the the Public Works Equipment Reserve is an annual allocation in the budget. So unless we increase that allocation, such as this motion is indicating to do, there isn't enough money to replace that equipment. We have done some analysis looking at long-term replacement costs for the equipment that exists today, and the number that you're seeing there is the 750 is what's required to do 100% replacement of all the equipment that's in there. Yeah. Now with the vehicle service study, that's going to look at what the vehicle requirements are. And it'll give us a better indication as to what is required for the standards and costs that the Public Works required to do the work they need to do.
Yeah. So I remember that being the case, and I understand that there's an annual allocation, but there were also, if I remember correctly, Mr. Girardi, when Public Works does works in other department, that those departments get charged and that goes into surplus for that work?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councilor Nero, you're thinking more of our carpentry area because that's how that department is supported. But when we do work, we do some work for outside agencies, not within the city. If it's within the city, it's covered under our budget. But if we're doing work for, say, the MTO, because we do portions of highway outside our city limits, which would be more beyond the Prince area and by Crocap, we're doing work for MTO, and that's a charge out, and we do receive funding from that. We do get paid for that.
I'm thinking more in terms, if I may, Mr. Mayor. If you clean the parking lots at the fire department.
No.
Does that department not transfer to your budget?
So go to the treasurer for this.
I think what you're looking at is the equipment rental charges. And you have to keep in mind, it's not a money-making. All that is allocating the cost of the equipment to the area that's using it. So when Public Works goes and plows the parking lot for fire, yes, they'll have a charge to fire, and it'll include the equipment cost, any materials, any labor, et cetera. It goes to that department, but it's only a cost allocation within the city. It's not like you're making money. It's the same money just being allocated to the different areas.
Well, I was under the impression that money from the fire department budget was moved to a reserve for Public Works.
No, that's incorrect, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions on this matter? So back to Councillor Bruni, you seem to be sympathetic to Councillor Shoemaker's proposition that it be included for this year.
For this year, but then I would like to see the service program review done, fleet service program.
We would have to budget for that then for 2020. Councillor Gardy.
Could I ask a question, please?
Sure.
To Mr. Girardi, and I don't know if this is an appropriate one, but we're going to spend 50 grand on doing this. And Mr. Girardi, could you take a guess as to if, like, what you get back from this assessment is going to be beyond the 750 anyway? Could you provide any kind of estimation?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardy, I guess I certainly can't give you a full indication of what will come back, but what I can say is that an assessment was done, a very good assessment was done by Finance, assisting our Public Works fleet manager to come up with the 750, and that's just to maintain our existing fleet. The reason why we want to go forward with this study is to determine what our service needs are as far as mechanics and manpower. It's a full package. It's telling you what kind of equipment you should have for this side of city, which kind of equipment you should be having on hand, the amount of servicemen you need to keep them repaired. It's a full review. So to tell you, is it gonna, be careful what you ask for? Certainly there could be that. We could find out that we need more if they look at our city. We did an inside review. We left you with that number. We thought it was reasonable. And now it's basically your decision.
Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Bruni, I'm just reading the operative clause again, and I frankly think that both of your views are pretty consistent with it.
I think so too.
Because it says, with a view to providing further increases, but it doesn't necessarily require those increases, because that's pending the review in 2020 that you want to see, Councillor Bruni. So I would read this all to be contingent on what we do post this year, post 2020 is contingent upon that review.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Earlier you said that it will be in the budget for the next 3 years.
Well,
When
I
you
didn't,
answered
I
Councillor
said that
Shoemaker.
before I reviewed. Appreciate I read this
Okay.
motion a couple weeks ago. And I just reread this motion now, and it says, we'll read the whole operative clause, and I'll tell you why I believe it to be that way. Be it resolved that council directs staff to include a 250,000 increase to the Public Works Vehicle Reserve in 2020 preliminary budget with a view. So that's not definitive, right? Because with the view to providing further pending a fleet service review in 2020. You want to see a fleet service review in 2020, and he wants that information before he agrees to increase it again. I think this is pretty consistent with that. So I think we did a good job addressing it from the outset. Councillor Christian?
Thank you. I'm just a little confused. So if we go ahead with the 1 year, we bring it forward for budget consideration in 2020.
For 2020.
For 2020, and now we approve the fleet services review for
2020. This motion doesn't make the 2021 and 2022 increases automatic.
Right. So we'd have to get the review back before we consider the 21.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. Councillor Dufour.
My question is for, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Girardi. Where exactly do we sit right now with our reserve account, given the amount of equipment that we lost during this past season, and obviously the state of our fleet, because we did not approve your requested increases? The fleet's going to be 1 year older next year, but I would assume that many of the machines listed up there do need to be replaced, and has that put your department or your reserve fund in a deficit position?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Dufour, our reserve, our 1.1 that we have annually, we'll still go ahead and purchase the same equipment that we were going to purchase. Nothing's really going to change. It's primary winter control equipment that we purchased with that 1.1. The equipment, we did lose one to fire, as you're very much aware. That's going through the insurance process, where we wait to see what the results of that'll be. Other pieces of equipment that we have, and I guess the way you have to look at it is, if your equipment gets older, your maintenance costs go up. So to try and keep a balance, you try and keep your equipment to a reasonable age. We have several pieces of equipment that are beyond their life. That's what's making our maintenance costs go up. So we're going to be over budget on our maintenance costs. If we had newer equipment, we would bring that down and hopefully not be so far over budget on maintenance costs. So you're just trying to keep a balance.
Certainly, that's been my experience in the construction world as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so Councillor Christian, can we clear you up so we can vote on this?
Yeah, just if I can just ask Mr. Girardi one question, because it just came up in this conversation. If in a perfect world, if you received a substantial increase for fleet replenishment, can you peg a number on how much that would reduce your maintenance costs? What I'm getting at is it's you know, you might invest $750, but you're saving on the other end in services, because you said the reverse is true, because we're not spending, our maintenance costs are going up. Do we have any idea at this point what that trade-off is if in fact we go ahead with this 3-year program?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Christian, that's a real difficult number to get, because you don't know exactly what's going to break on your equipment throughout the year. We could have one differential go on a grader, and that's $40,000. So you're trying to keep your equipment maintained to a point so it doesn't get out of hand.
Right.
But to put an exact number to that would be really a real tough one.
Let me rephrase the question then.
Will it reduce? It will.
Yeah. So would you, in the process of establishing a budget, knowing that it's a crapshoot, really, right? Would you consciously or proactively reduce your maintenance budget, given that you have $750,000 more?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Christian, while I'm sitting about probably over $500,000 over, so
Right.
I couldn't reduce that budget. I would just be bringing it closer to coming in on budget.
All right.
So Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the CFO. In a discussion on I can't think of what it's called, but it's the one we hired KPMG to do recently, the service inventory or whatever it's called. We had an exchange about, sometimes we can allocate funds at the end of, close to the end of the year, from various departments that have not used up all their budgets to do certain reviews that we know are necessary. So I'm wondering if perhaps, this might be to the CAO actually, near the end of this year, if we might be able to look at various funds that haven't been spent and do the service level review, budget for the service level review within this current year's budget for next year to be done.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Again, as we come closer to the end of the year, we certainly would look at what opportunities are there. I should remind, we do have a couple, not just the service review, we are also in the process of undertaking an asset management policy, which we'll be bringing to council for its consideration in July, or actually before July, because we have to be compliant with requirements provincially in terms of putting an asset management policy forward and then bringing plans forward in that context. So issues like the fleet maintenance across the corporation, not just in terms of the fleet services program review that's been described for Public Works, would be all part of that. And we would look at whether or not we want to do it before the 2020 time, if monies do come available for us to be able to look at that.
Okay.
I'll look to CFO for any further comments she might.
I just have one further comment. Part of the consideration while we do this study, even though we're going to be doing a separate study on the fleet, we also have to consider that we're doing the municipal reference model for the service level reviews. That's going to set out what our service levels actually are, and those are also going to tie into our asset management plan as we update that. So the equipment that we say right now may or may not be the same equipment once we do the standard. And I'm not saying whether it's going to be higher or lower, but to do the equipment review right now might be putting the cart before the horse, to quote a councillor. So I think it may be worthwhile to wait until early 2020 to do that. And once we have that standards in place, municipal reference model, it may give a better basis for that other review.
Right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have a vote. All in favor of the motion? The motion's carried. So we'll just see who we need to vote from.
To Councillor Christian.
Councillor Christian, no, he's good. He's voted, hasn't he?
Yep, there we are.
Okay, so we're on 8.3 then, Council.
This is a motion by Councillors Hilsinger and Shoemaker. Whereas good mobility is essential to further developing our community's economic growth, social equity, cultural vitality, and environmental sustainability, as outlined by future Sault Ste. Marie. And whereas City Council desires to ensure that all residents, specifically including persons with disabilities, have access to safe, affordable, convenient, well-designed, and interconnected transportation, whether they choose to walk, cycle, use transit, or drive a vehicle. And whereas the Sioux Trails Advocacy Committee, or STAC, is a citizen-based organization that encourages non-motorized mobility options in the community. And whereas the city approved a new transportation master plan in 2015, which included recommendations on capacity improvements, investment in active transportation, implementation of the cycling master plan, and using a complete streets approach and road diets to meet the needs of all modes of travel. And whereas the city approved an active transportation infrastructure implementation strategy in 2017, and whereas the city adopted a transit route optimization study in 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that city staff be requested to provide a report as part of the preliminary capital budget identifying how the transportation master plan, cycling master plan, active transportation implementation strategy, and transit route optimization study recommendations will be implemented. And further, that city staff be requested to provide a report for all new municipal facilities, new streets, and road reconstruction projects on how the principles of complete streets will be used to ensure that municipal facilities and roadways incorporate all modes of transportation.
Councillor Hilsinger. Yeah, you got your mic.
Thank you. This is an issue that I campaigned on, and I felt a lot of support, certainly from the community in general and people in my Ward 3. Mobility and active transportation is an important issue for the health of our community, for reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, for making transportation by all modes available to people in the way that they choose to use them. I've been a member of STAC for 15 years and the chair for a long time, and I'm very passionate about this issue of creating an integrated transportation plan where all of the reports that have been referred to in the motion are considered in an integrated way, focusing on complete streets and prioritizing all forms of transportation, and shifting to the thinking that we are not budgeting for roads. We are not budgeting for cycling, but we are budgeting and planning and spending our money on transportation in general. And all forms of transportation are important. And I do truly appreciate the willingness of the staff to look at these processes differently. Certainly, I've seen some support, in particular from Mr. McConnell and Mr. Turco and Mr. Elliott. And we need a transportation infrastructure that meets the needs of all of our residents and is in part of improvements that we can continue to make to improve our quality of life that's attractive to new residents and people who, frankly, people's habits are switching, and younger people are not using cars in the same way as we did as we were growing up in our generation. And if we make these investments, we can make it an integrated way for us to have more trails, to have more cycling lanes, to have reduced time to use transit, and to have the best form of roads transportation possible for a great, healthy, and happy community.
Any other comments or questions on this? Just want to thank Councillor Hilsinger for her work on this. Councillor Hilsinger has been involved in active transportation for a long time in our community, and when we talked about this issue, she pointed out there's a lot of good work in a lot of the reports that were done and a lot of the work staff's done, but we have to live it. We have to. It's not enough to produce a report and a plan. We have to actually not just plan, but we have to actually look at how we're going to implement those plans. And so there's lots of great work done, and this is an effort to try and live that work and make sure we're conscientious of that work while we make decisions. So I want to thank her for her work, and I want to also recognize staff that helped develop this motion in a way that will create these discussions. I think it's an important distinction to not just talk about a roads budget, but to talk about a transportation budget. That certainly includes roads, but there's a difference. And I want to thank Councillor Hilsinger for raising that. I think this is a good motion, and I'm happy to support it. All in favor? Motion is carried. So we'll move to 8.4. So council, we'll have the clerk, the deputy clerk read this motion. Any substantial questions on it, I'm going to direct to Mr. Vare. It's a funding opportunity and a partnership opportunity he brought to my attention, and I do think we have some interest from our First Nation partners to participate in this, but there was a timeliness issue, so we had to to move forward, he needs our direction and support, and then if he gets it tonight, we'll meet with either of or both of Batchewana First Nation and Garden River First Nation, and we'll put something together with them and we'll submit it. So, Madam Clerk, if you could read the motion.
A motion by Councillors Scott and Gardy, whereas the Council for the Advancement of Native Development Officers and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities have a First Nation Municipal Community Economic Development Initiative, or CEDI. Whereas there is an opportunity for the city to submit an application with one or both of Batchewana First Nation and Garden River First Nation to participate in the CEDI. Whereas the city embraces the opportunity to partner with and work with either of or both of Batchewana First Nation and Garden River First Nation. Now therefore be it resolved that City Council support the submission of an application to participate in the CEDI with either or both of Batchewana First Nation and Garden River First Nation, and direct staff to work with either or both of them to complete and submit an application accordingly.
Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly support any initiatives that we can partner with. But my question is this, through you to Mr. Vare. I see the initiative. What specifically is the project? Or am I misunderstanding what this is?
Through you, we need Mr. Vare's mic, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian. Essentially, the program brings in a facilitator to do a number of workshops with the municipality and the First Nations groups to identify opportunities to collaborate. And then there are opportunities to apply for additional funding, which would actually be, there's a capacity building grant, a study tour learning grant, and a peer mentoring grant that can accompany that once you go through those workshop processes to help advance initiatives between the municipality and the First Nations.
So it's an opportunity to begin a dialogue, to investigate possibilities of joint ventures, et cetera.
Joint economic ventures.
Excellent idea.
Councillor Dufour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To you, Mr. Ver. Is this fund 100% funded, or is it matching funds from the municipality?
Yeah, through you, Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, it's 100% funded for the first phase of the program.
Great. Okay, all in favor? Motion carried. So we will get to bylaws, and then we are at section 12. When we get to section 12, Mr. Brown, we can have a conversation.
Okay, we're moving to bylaws under consent. A motion by Councillors Zezo, Allen, and Nero, resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date March 4, 2019 be approved, save and accept bylaw 2019-40.
All in favor? Carried.
Councillor Gardy is out of the room. Okay.
We have to discuss, Mr. Clerk, too, when a councillor leaves the room. That hangs up our voting process. So we've been talking about some obvious challenges that we're going to have with this, and that's another one.
Okay, the next motion I have is the motion to move into closed session.
No, okay, so we have one more motion left. Before we get to that, Council, Mr. Brown is here. He's here under Section 12. Mr. Brown knows our procedural bylaw well, and he knows that he has to make a request in writing to give a delegation to the clerk, and the request has to come 1 week before the meeting. He hasn't done that. In this specific respect to what he wants to speak to, I don't know what he wants to speak to. He also knows that in our bylaw, there's a section that indicates even if he hasn't given notice, complied with the 2 sections I referred to, council can grant him the permission to speak. So he wants to speak to a matter. I would give you more information if I had any. I don't know what matter he wants to speak to, but he's here asking for the permission to speak. There would need to be a mover and a seconder to give him that permission, and then we would vote on it as a whole. And if you granted him the permission to speak, he would speak. I think it would be fairly anomalous to grant him permission to speak when you don't know what he wants to speak on. I don't know if you want to give any indication, Mr. Brown, of what you want to speak on. That's not to say that you can speak on it.
Okay. Yeah, how about if I just say what I'd like to speak on? You can deem it in order or out of order.
What's the topic that you want to speak on, Mr. Brown?
Well, there's actually 3 separate items, so I'd like to make 3 requests to speak.
You want 3 separate 5-minute delegations?
Yes.
Okay, so we would need 3 separate motions for that.
Right.
Okay, so you have 3 separate topics. So you're asking them to give you the chance to speak on 3 separate things that they don't know what you want to speak on.
Right.
And I don't know what you want to speak
on.
But
I'll let you know.
Okay, so what's the first thing that you want to speak on?
So the first one is, I've had occasion to speak to, or to email.
We need a topic, Mr. Brown.
It's about emailing city council and not receiving acknowledgement of my emails, nor getting answers to my emails.
Okay, thank you for that topic. Does anybody want to move in second to let Mr. Brown speak on this topic? I'm seeing none, Mr. Brown, so you're not permitted to make a delegation on that topic. What's the second topic?
Thank you. Second topic is the financial conflict of interest the city's negotiators have in negotiating union contracts.
Okay, that's the topic. You can't speak to it until we give you permission to do that. So
I need a fix to that, yes.
Yeah. So I need a mover and a seconder for that if he's going to speak to that. I'm seeing none, Mr. Brown. So the third topic?
The third topic is I'd like to request to speak about your participation as the representative of City Council on the Agenda Review Committee. Did the Agenda Review Committee not approve any delegation requests for this council meeting?
So I can answer, I'm happy to answer your question, but first we're going to pass a motion on whether or not you're going to speak to that. So do I have a mover or seconder to permit Mr. Brown to speak to that? Seeing none. Mr. Brown, I think the only delegation we didn't permit at this meeting was, I think you requested a delegation on the library board matter, and I think we had indicated to you that if a councillor moved and seconded a reconsideration of that, we would look at your delegation at that time in lieu of that. We wouldn't consider your delegation, and we received no other delegation requests, unless the clerk is going to correct me.
Only the ones that we had.
Yeah, well, obviously the ones that we're on, yeah. It's very rare, Mr. Brown, that we turn down a delegation request. I know, I believe you think it happens frequently, but it's very rare.
No, but you said only the ones we have? What does that mean exactly?
The ones that delegated tonight.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your attendance.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you can propose the motion to go into closed session.
I have a motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Nero. Resolved that this council proceed into closed session to discuss 2 property acquisitions. Further be it resolved that should the said closed session be adjourned, the council may reconvene in closed session to continue to discuss the same matters without the need for a further authorizing resolution. That's Municipal Act Section 239-2C.
All in favor? Carried. We've got to speed this process up.
Push it. The motion by Councillors Vezo, Allen, and Bruni that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Carried.